Okay, hello everyone. Yeah, sorry, technical problems there. We're going to talk about like a couple of things that happened yesterday. I say happened yesterday. I don't know when they actually happened, but were revealed yesterday. So Rishi Sunak conducted, in many ways, an ill-advised interview with Piers Morgan. I mean, the interview itself wasn't ill-advised, but he was very poor in it. It gives you a little bit of a taste of just how easy it's going to be stitched up. I've said for a long time, Sunak is going to be stitched up come the general election campaign. Imagine him being interviewed by someone who's going to do it properly. And so he was up against Piers Morgan yesterday, and Piers Morgan was feeding him lines. But there was a couple of things in it where Rishi Sunak should really be in a great deal of trouble. I don't know how much trouble, but let's go through them. The first, of course, the famous one, the one that is being covered all over the media, would be the bet. The bet that Rishi Sunak appeared to make with Piers Morgan about whether or not the Rwandan flights will get off the air. Very distasteful. And there's a few people saying, oh, but, you know, he was damned if he didn't, damned if he didn't. It's like absolute rubbish. All Rishi Sunak had to say was, look, actually, this is a very serious policy. I don't feel the need to, I don't know, there's some buffering here. It looks weird on my screen, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just getting word here that the stream's not working very well. Yeah. All right. Right, okay. So we'll try that again. Obviously, there's a delay from my end to see if it's all right. Yes, technical problems from Graham's side on this one. Sorry about that. So I was just talking about the bet that Rishi Sunak made. And there's some people saying, well, you know, what was he going to do about it? What he should have done about it was to say, look, this is a serious matter. And I have committed already by, you know, giving lots of parliamentary time. I've passed a bill through the House of Commons. It's now progressing through the House of Lords. So my commitment is clear. I don't need a childish gimmick to emphasize the fact. He could have just said that. He could have just said that, you know, and he could have just said, you know, I don't bet, I don't gamble, which he doesn't. You know, he's known for not gambling. He's actually quite, if it weren't for the fact that he was quite evil, he'd be quite a sort of sober person to have in government. He doesn't drink. He doesn't gamble. He lives quite healthily. He's just a malevolent arsehole, that's all. So he could easily have battered it away. This morning, for example, it is biting him on the arse a bit, and he's tried to rein back on it a little bit by saying, oh, that he was bounced into it. He didn't expect it, things like that. And if again he thinks that's a defense, and you're thinking, hang on a minute, you didn't expect it. It was an interview. You're not supposed to be fed all your lines in advance. It's an interview. You are going to be asked to do things that you won't expect. And as a senior politician, as he's not an experienced politician, but as a senior politician, I think it's still buffering this. As a senior politician, it's still I don't even know if this is streaming properly. Sorry. Right. Right. So I'll keep going with it. I'm being told. I've whispered in my ear that it's actually not too bad. So yeah, but the main thing I want to talk about, I'm just getting distracted, sorry, is not so much that, I mean, Rishi Sunak also in the interview carried on a bit of a lie that the Tories have been pushing, and they said they were going to push this before Christmas. They sort of announced it in attempting to smear Starmer's legal career. So he again repeated the lie, the long debunked lie, that Starmer chose to defend various terrorist groups, including one that's been recently prescribed. And it's not true. Just to be clear about it, by the way, of course, it's not true. He has chosen to defend certain people in the past. He's chosen to defend striking minors. He's chosen to, defend some people pro bono. That's where you choose. But as a barrister, there's a thing called the cab rank rule, and it basically means if someone needs legal defense, and of course, it's a very important rule for justice. If you want to prosecute someone, then in order for justice to be done, there has to be a fair trial. A fair trial means that the accused gets legal defense, right? So if you want terrorists to be prosecuted, you have to want them to have legal defense, because otherwise, how do you know that the conviction was safe if they don't get defense, right? So the cab rank rule says that if someone needs legal defense, they can go to any barrister within their area of competence. So if you're going to put up, say, a human rights defense, you have the right to engage any, oh, that looks better, any human rights lawyer, right? As long as you pay the going rate. So any organization or person, whilst Keir Starmer was a human rights barrister, anyone who needed his services on an area of human rights, he couldn't turn it down. That's the cab rank rule. That is why Lord Panic had to defend Boris Johnson during the Privileges Committee inquiry. If anyone who watched Boris Johnson's evidence, Lord Panic was sat behind him and quite a lot of time had his head in his hands, couldn't believe it, which is not a job that he wanted, but he had to. Cab rank rule, it was within his area of expertise, and Boris Johnson was willing to pay his fees, with our money, of course, but the fees were being paid, and that's all there is to it. And Rishi Sunak knows this. So now we're in a situation where we've potentially got a defamation case against Sunak, because Sunak's now repeated this lie, and he's done it outside of the House of Commons, so he can't claim parliamentary privilege, so he can be sued. Now, just to be clear, we see this all the time, but we saw it this last week with Lawrence Fox, didn't we? Defamation. So we've had a reminder of how defamation law works. It's not, you can't sue someone just because they tell lies about you. That there's a very high bar for defamation, which protects free speech, right? So there's a couple of bars you have to be able to meet to be able to prove defamation. First, harm has to be caused. That's where Lawrence Fox fell down. He was trying to sue people for calling him racist, and it was like, you've not had no one calling you a racist has done you any harm, therefore no case. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. It doesn't matter whether the people calling him a racist believed it or not. Makes no difference. If it does no harm, there is no case. Now, the harm in this case should be obvious, because Rishi Sunak is deliberately trying to damage Keir Starmer's reputation in order to change the course of an election. Now, it's not going to work, but that is the attempt. So Sunak it's not just that what he's saying could cause damage. He's actually trying to cause damage. The second part would be, did Rishi Sunak have some good reason for saying it? So even if something you say in theory harms someone, if you had good reason to say it, then again, it's not defamation. So there's like public interest defenses and all sorts at this point, and I'm not a legal expert. But should we just say Rishi Sunak will not have had any good reason for he wouldn't have had any good reason for believing this, because he's used the lie before, and he's been told in no uncertain terms that it is a lie about the cab rank rule. He knows that, so he can't defend that it was an honest mistake. So then we come to think, so should Keir Starmer sue him? I think he should. Unfortunately, I don't think he will, but I think he should. There's a lot of advantages to Starmer suing Sunak. First of all, it will help raise the profile. You know, the sort of saying, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's sort of like, you know, a lie races around the world and the truth limps afterwards. This is the same sort of thing, except if Starmer were to sue Sunak, I mean, that would be quite tasty for the news media, wouldn't it? you know, you've got the leader of the opposition. You've got basically the two candidates for prime minister after the election, one suing the other. I mean, that is a political story and a half, and it's one that will run for a while. So it'll get a lot of attention in the press. And here's the thing. I don't think Starmer should just sue Sunak. I think he should sue the broadcaster, Piers Morgan's company. Was he doing it for Talk TV? I'm not actually sure. But he should sue them because Rishi Sunak didn't just come out with the line. He was set up for it. So Piers Morgan set him up for it. And Piers Morgan knows the truth as well. So Piers Morgan and the broadcaster also have they also have some liability here because they know their broad. In fact, they set Rishi Sunak up for that line. It was clear collusion. So he could try suing both of them. And the potential benefit, I say potential benefit, again, I'm not an expert, but the potential benefit of that is that when the mainstream media do try and report on this, they will have to be careful that they themselves do not amplify the lie part of it. They'll have to report on the case, the lawsuit, but if they miss out certain bits of information, like not mentioning the cab rank rule, they run the risk of being sued themselves. And something like this could well attract a fair payout. Consider that Lawrence Fox could be in the frame for 3 million quid for calling those people paedophiles falsely, right? So imagine a situation like this, way higher profile. You know, and these newspapers, these Tory media outlets, they, you know, some of them are struggling. In fact, most of them are struggling. They can't afford to get themselves be in the frame for like millions of pounds, you know, in court. So they can have, so I would suggest it would sort of put the mainstream media on a warning that you need to be very careful about how you report on this. At the same time, they'll have to report on it because it'll be huge news. So I think there's a lot of advantages. And the other thing, again, I'm not an expert. I have to keep saying this is my speculation as someone who doesn't know defamation law very well. But what I would, was this about Morgan calling him a terrorist sympathizer? Yes, this is exactly what that is. So Piers Morgan absolutely set Rishi Sunak up for it. So as I say, Morgan and his broadcaster should be in the frame for being sued as well. So what I'd also potentially think as well. So let's say Starmer sues and Sunak's legal advice is, yeah, you're going to lose this really badly. You need to retract, apologize, and never mention this lie again, right? That's his legal advice. So now the downside is, of course, a defamation case can take months or years. Like the Lawrence Fox case took, what, 3 years or something, which is not that unusual. So it can take a very long time. Usually, they only end quickly if one side realizes they're going to lose and pulls out, right? So I'd be thinking to myself, right, let us say that Rishi Sunak is told that if he persists with this, the case won't be until the after election, but if he persists with it to try and still use it in the election, he's actually just going to make it worse for himself. And he might turn, you know, £3 million into £20 million compensation. Now, someone like Rishi Sunak obviously is incredibly rich, but even he would balk, I imagine, at something like, and I'm throwing figures out here, I don't know what it would be. But the idea of it being much worse for him, if he persists, if he goes through the whole election cycle with it, because then Starmer will be able to claim much greater damage done. So there would be, I think there'd be a reasonable chance that Sunak will have to pull away from it. And I'll tell you another thing it might do as well, just to split the Tories. I don't know whether people remember a few years ago when Boris Johnson tried the same thing with the Jimmy Savile stuff. Again, another long debunked lie about Starmer's time as a lawyer. Quite a few of Johnson's own MPs, a lot of Tory MPs didn't like it. You know, they audibly, in fact, they publicly distanced themselves from what Johnson had said. They said it was beyond the pale. Now, they don't seem to be doing that. I think a lot of Tory MPs have just gone native on this now. They've thought, okay, well, it's for the general election. We'll just keep our mouths closed. But I think a lot of them will be uncomfortable with it. And what's more, I think a lot of their voters will. And I think if Starmer suing Sunak raises the profile, you might get some Tory MPs who aren't chasing the Reform UK crowd, but they're chasing the sort of conservatives with a small c, the moderate conservative voters. If they're going to if they feel that they have to nail their colours to the mast and actually disown Sunak's comments, then even without the case coming to fruition, that could be quite useful as well. I think there's a lot of advantages to this, but it does depend on, you know, would Sunak risk it or not? Would his legal advice be that it will or it won't cause more trouble for him afterwards as well? Just a reminder, Murdoch's Fox channel, which rebroadcast Morgan, settled the Dominion defamation for $787.5 million. I mean, what I would say is in America, the payouts tend to be much, much larger. In this country, we don't go mad like that. So I don't think this wouldn't break Rishi Sunak. This wouldn't like make him a pauper. There's no way that Starmer would be able to sue him for everything he has. He's got far too much. But I could well see how it could, if Lawrence Fox could be in the frame for £3 million, and that's not just compensation, that's the legal fees as well, of course. But nonetheless, Sunak as the loser would have to pay the legal fees as well. And the longer it drags on, the higher those legal fees get. So sue Sunak and donate the proceeds to charity. I would certainly, yes, I would, obvious, but that would be for later. I would certainly say that after all costs have been deducted, whatever Starmer's left with, inevitably you would donate to whatever is some worthy charity of the day. But that doesn't matter. The point for now is the political angle here. If Sunak doesn't sue, he's almost like saying it's not part of the normal rough and tumble of political life. If he does sue him, then there is the potential for Sunak to be told, if you do not retract this and stop it before the election, you're going to turn what would be a strong case into one that's going to cost you a lot of money. And when you consider that Rishi Sunak entered politics purely to make even more money, you do have to wonder if he'd really, for the sake of winning a few more votes maybe, because this isn't going to swing the election for him, if he would really be prepared to be in the frame for. See, I'd be quite interested in what it could potentially go to. Let's have a quick look here. I'm just going to try and search up record defamation settlements in the UK. I don't know how easy it is to find. Go away. What's the top one? No, that's worldwide. I need it specifically in the UK. Don't know. We don't do it like in America, though. I'll catch up with some comments anyway there. A cease and desist letter. So obviously, yeah, it doesn't. I mean, yeah, if Starmer were to take legal action, you don't start off by filling out the court papers. You do initially, yes, fill out as Blaze saying there, a cease and desist letter. You first of all send a letter saying, you know, this is wrong for the following reasons. We must insist that you stop this and issue a full apology. Otherwise, we'll have no option but to take this further, type of thing. So, yeah. Paul saying there, Kwarteng's just announced he's stepping down at the next election. Yeah, another one bites the dust. There may be several more of them. I haven't looked at Kwarteng's own seat to see whether it's a safe one and he is just stepping down because he can't be asked to be in opposition, or whether he just doesn't fancy a grueling election campaign followed by a humiliating loss in the early hours of the morning in a sports hall. But there we go. Nicholas saying, if Starmer doesn't tackle this, he can expect more of the same during the election campaign. So, well, there's several things about it. Absolutely. If Starmer doesn't sue, he is basically saying it's just part of the rough and tumble of politics. No, it's not. There is a rough and tumble of politics. There are also things that are beyond the pale. This is, this is fairly, I can't say clear defamation because I'm not a lawyer, but it seems, I mean, I have seen some lawyers, actual KC, senior barristers, saying that Starmer should sue. So there, in fact, Jessica Simo, who's a public law expert, someone was asking her, or particularly the clip was being shown to her about it, and she said one for the Bar Council, and then she actually said actually Starmer should just sue him. Will the King be there for the next general election? Yeah, I mean he's been caught. Like, okay. About Charles's cancer diagnosis, at the end of the day, when you're very wealthy, and the King is quite wealthy, you tend to have checkups a lot. Like for most of us, something like this will only transpire when there's a problem. So you go to the doctor with a problem, because we don't have checkups. Most people don't have medical checkups. So you don't, whereas, I mean, I don't know the details, but, you can well imagine it will have come as part of a routine check, in which case it'll have been caught very early. So I don't know, but Jared saying the stream was quite poor. Yes, sorry, there were issues earlier. Have I missed something here? How can you sue for defamation if you bets on the Rwanda scheme? So, okay, just to reiterate, we're not talking about suing for defamation based on the Rwanda bet. We're talking about suing for defamation based on telling lies about Starmer choosing to defend terrorists as a lawyer, which he didn't. So that's defamation. Sunak is deliberately spreading lies about Starmer's legal career, that he knows are lies. He's been told are lies because he's tried it before. He's doing it deliberately to try and damage Starmer's reputation in order to swing an election. So defamation should be a fairly obvious one. As a lawyer could sue on the grounds of putting the profession in disrepute. Yeah, he can use all sorts of justifications for it. He can say he's defending the legal profession. He can say, I mean, Keir Starmer has said one of his big missions is to restore trust in politics. He's saying this can be him starting to make a stand. Truth matters. But there we go. Gary's saying that Buckingham Palace live after Charles' cancer diagnosis. I saw someone posting that the Independent had actually done that, after the diagnosis. Oh, here's pictures of the palace. Why? The news has been announced. There is really no follow-up. He's started treatment. He's come out publicly about it, which is quite good. Apart from anything else, it may prompt a few more men to make sure they get themselves checked. Prostate cancer is like, it's like breast cancer for women. Only men take it less seriously. So, but yeah. But I mean, going back to the Kwasi Kwarteng thing, standing down, you might expect to see a few more standing down in the next month or so, because I think, Steve Retro's Loft just put something there. Is suggesting that the seat is actually quite safe. Does anyone know what the because I could easily look it up. Does anyone know what the new constituency would? I don't know whether boundaries have changed for his. A lot of boundaries have changed. But if someone can tell me what his constituency would be for the next election, I can actually look it up, because I've got handy the MRP poll that YouGov produced a few weeks ago, that huge MRP poll, and I'd be able to actually tell, but I don't know what his constituency is, or the new one, what the new one would be if it's changed. I just have to do this, just in case someone actually puts it in. All the best of the King in orbit. Is the rolling news necessary? There's plenty going on in the world. Quite exactly. I mean, I'm someone who's a bit in favor of constitutional monarchy, for example. So I'm like a monarchist, if you like. I don't want it on the news all the time. It's been announced. It's important to announce it because at the end of the day, he's head of state. And if the head of state is very ill and he's going to have to step back from his public duties for a while, or at least the ones where it's public facing, then yeah, sure. Because he doesn't actually just get to sit, put his feet up and have a rest. He will still be working, but he won't be going out and about. So yeah, we should know, but then that should be it. If there's any new news, people can update, but if there's nothing, at the end of the day, he's starting treatment. If the treatment is ultimately unsuccessful, there's no suggestion that it will be, that he would die soon. So we don't have to say, oh no, another coronation coming. Certainly, if there is one, it should not also be as expensive as the last one, because that'd be ridiculous. Kwarteng doesn't want to be in opposition. Looks like he'd win that seat. Well, in that case, that explains that. Yeah, I mean, there will be some people like that as well. They're not up for being in opposition. Do you know what? I am actually just going to look something up because I think if someone's been an MP for a certain amount of time, I don't attack stepping down. There's that's fine. But how long has he been an MP? Let's have a look. So he won in 2010. So yeah, actually, I'm going to call this out. Kwasi Kwarteng has never been in opposition. So he basically entered Parliament when the Conservatives won, sort of. They went into government. And now he's leaving at the point they're about to leave. So that's, to me, that is someone who was never really in it to be an MP. They were in it purely for the power, because his power will be much diminished. He'll still be an MP. I'm just saying Spelthorpe. Oh, Spelthorpe there. It's still there. Actually, I'll tell you something. This is according to the MRP poll that YouGov did. It's winnable for Labour, because I'll tell you what the MRP poll says for Spelthorpe. This was, bear in mind, over like December, the field work was done in December. These things can change a little bit. But it had the Conservatives on 34%, Labour on 29%, but it had the Lib Dems on 19%. Now, that is a large share of the vote for the Lib Dems. And if you think Labour are only 5 points behind, and you think there was to be a big tactical voting campaign there, Labour could take that, So actually, I don't think... So it could actually be either. Kwarteng could still be stepping down because he doesn't fancy being a Portillo. He wouldn't qualify as the Portillo moment, I suspect. But he maybe doesn't fancy losing anyway. That's winnable. According to that MRP poll, Labour are in striking distance of that. So Sarah asking there in terms of the to and fro, what about Labour's attack ads? Arguably the first one even more defamatory than Sunak's comment. It wasn't defamatory, no. You can argue it's beyond the pale. Indeed, I did do at the time, but it's not defamatory in the same way, because it wasn't claiming that Sunak had done a thing that he hadn't, whereas this is. So that is the sort of thing. I agree that sort of thing, wasn't really becoming, but it wasn't claiming that Sunak did something that he didn't, or that he supports a group that he didn't. It was basically attacking him for not really caring about victims of serious crimes. Where's Graham? Put his foot up. I think he's ill. A bit of tactical voting something could be cried at 1 a.m. in the local sports hall. There are quite a few seats, in actual fact. Now, I'm not showing you it because we'll come to the end anyway. I'm just going to go for the last little thing. If I put this MRP poll, there's not a single constituency. Now, I will just caution here. So with this MRP poll, it was done by YouGov, and YouGov have a very good track record. In fact, in 2017, that's when they really made their name, because they were very good when comparing their poll with the general election results. There was someone else who did an MRP poll and they cocked it right up. YouGov got it right, and they were pretty good in 2019 as well. So at the moment they prove themselves, but I will caution this is based on new boundaries, as it has to be for the new election, and that makes it more difficult. Like voting intention polls are very difficult anyway, when you've got a first past the post system, especially. And when you've got new boundaries, that makes it way more difficult. So it adds an extra element of inaccuracy. But what I will say is on this MRP poll, not a single Conservative constituency has more than 40% of the vote share. Now, if you consider there were lots of constituencies at the last election that the Conservatives won with more than 50% of the vote. Because if you're going to get more than 50% of the vote, it's like, you know, even if all of the other voters clubbed together, they wouldn't have beaten you. Admittedly, if some who stayed at home went out and voted against them, it would have done. But not a single one has more than 50% of the vote here. So even the safest Tory seats, and there are some that are still safe enough, if there was enough tactical voting, none of them are safe. The Tories could actually be literally wiped out. They won't be, because people won't vote tactically in enough numbers in the safe seats, because they won't necessarily see that. But they could absolutely be wiped out. But in that Spelthorpe, yeah, that's vulnerable. That is it. So Kwarteng is vulnerable there. And I'll tell you something else, what might be interesting. I don't know Spelthorpe at all, but it'd be interesting to know what Kwasi Kwarteng's personal reputation's like there, because if there's a load of voters did not thank him for that mini budget, it might well be that Kwasi Kwarteng would have, because this is an MRP poll, right? They don't do a poll in each individual constituency. It's based on certain types of voter. But if you imagine, so Labour already 5%, only 5 points behind. The Lib Dems are on 19%. So if there was a collapse in the Lib Dem vote in tactical voting, then that could easily drive Labour over the line. But if you also imagine if Kwasi Kwarteng is personally a drag, if he's vote negative because of his role in the mini budget, and he had a big role, he was the Chancellor who announced it, then actually Spelthorpe could well have been, with Kwarteng standing, a very, very vulnerable seat for the Tories. So I think there was a good chance, looking at that poll, that Kwarteng would have lost, you know. I don't think he was stepping down just because he don't want to be in opposition. That may also be true. I think he was on for losing it. Looking at that, I can easily see how he could have lost that. But anyway, right, with a Surrey seat being vulnerable to a Labour switch is a hell of a development. Indeed, there are several Surrey seats. I think Jeremy Hunt's a Surrey one, isn't he? Michael Gove. There are some very vulnerable ones there. There are some very vulnerable ones. Oh, someone's trying to correct my pronunciation. I'm not interested in pronouncing these southern places properly. But anyway, I'll leave it on that one for now. How does anyone not see them as an optimistic death cult? It blows my mind. Well, politics, isn't it? It's politics. But we'll have to leave it there anyway, especially if the stream's going to sort of go belly up again quite soon. Thanks for coming on, everyone. Have a very good day. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe, of course. And until next time, I'll see you later.